All right, everyone. Welcome to my video. This is Lafratta. Let us transact. I am the best realtor in all Calgary and surrounding regions. Alrighty, what we have seen in Calgary for the month of August, some easing off of the sales. So sales actually on the aggregate were down 19.5% from last year, which sounds super scary, but we're actually still slightly above the long-term average. So we're still, here we are. There were 2,186 sales in August, representing a 20% decline from last year's record high, but still 17% higher than long-term average. So we're just not as hot as last year, which is great. Honestly, it makes it easier to do stuff. Our price still went up 6.3% to 601,800. That's everything combined. Let's break it down. What did best? What didn't do so well? I'm gonna have to turn my phone on silent. Our detached houses went up 9.5% year over year. Semis up 9.6%. Row price for the townhouses 12.5%, and the apartments 15.8%. So if you have a condo, apartment style condo, sell it now. This is your window of time to sell it because they, in the long run, don't hold their value very well. Inventory is up significantly, up 37.3% year over year. New listings up 13%. Months of supply up 70%. So we're moving towards a more balanced market. And let's see what regions of the city did best. All right, so keeping with the trend that we have seen over the past year, the east of the city went up the most at 14.4% year over year. So the basically the cheapest area of the city, the east, a lot of people traditionally did not want to be anywhere close to there. This is your Forest Lawn, your Dover, those sorts of areas went up the most. Next, the Northeast. So it went up 10.8% year over year. And followed by the South, what most people would consider the deep Southwest, went up 8.4%. And the area that went up the least was the city center, up 2.6%. A lot of people don't want to be downtown nowadays because it's crowded, fair amount of crime, good place to avoid. Let's move on to the other areas surrounding Calgary. All right, moving on to the communities outside of the city of Calgary, we have Airdrie. Airdrie went up 7.8% year over year. Sales monthly down 15.7% from last August. Inventory up significantly, and months of supply up also significantly, much more balanced market in Airdrie. Cochrane, same sort of thing. So price up 8.4%, sales down slightly. Inventory basically the same, but the months of supply again dictate if we're in a buyer's market, a balanced market, or a seller's market. Still a seller's market, but moving towards a balanced market. Okotoks, price up 7.2%. Inventory up significantly, 38%. Months of supply up. It's still very much a seller's market in Okotoks, but we're moving upwards towards that balanced market. Anything else in here that is significant? Let's take a look at what areas went up in price the most. All right, so Airdrie, actually High River went up in price the most. I don't cover Canmore. High River went up in price the most, 9.8. Oh no, Strathmore, 11.5%. up the most, followed by High River and Airdrie. Cochrane, Okotoks both up around 9%. So it looks like generally around 9 to 10% for the communities around Calgary, except for Chestermere for some reason only went up 7.2%. So generally speaking, for the market, Calgary and area, still hot, cooling down a bit. Next up, I'm going to get into some news, both provincial, citywide, and national. Looking at the Canada 5-year government bond, over the past month, it's been pretty much stable around that 3% mark. And again, why this is significant, this will dictate the fixed rate mortgages. So the fixed rate mortgages have been coming down. You should be getting one between 4.5 and 5, generally speaking. And if this continues going down, we'll see better rates. Now, what we're seeing among the major lenders is that the mortgages, a lot of people are not getting mortgages. People are struggling to buy homes now. So these big banks, big lenders are having to compete for a smaller pie. We're actually seeing the mortgage rates go down pretty quickly. So there's Canada's caught up in a historic mortgage rate war, says RBC. So that's we're seeing mortgage rates start to come down. Now, a lot of people are speculating that there's going to be a interest rate cut at the Bank of Canada coming up September. That's pretty much guaranteed. Some people are actually saying, some economists are actually saying we might see a 50 basis point cut in September. That would be great news for people with variable rate mortgages, and it would definitely make it easier for people to buy homes again. So the Calgary City Council has finally approved the phase 1 of the Green Line LRT. There's going to be fewer stops, and it's going to cost more money as per usual with government projects, but at least the shovels will be hitting the ground sometime soon. Housing starts now. Alberta actually has increased by 29% year over year compared to July is the latest data, July of last year. Ontario's only up 8%, Quebec's only up 7.8%, and BC's slightly down, New Brunswick's down, Manitoba's down. So the prairies are doing rather well. Alberta and Saskatchewan's up 30% for housing starts. So Alberta actually set a record for new housing starts. So the trend is continuing, and what we're seeing generally, the inventory is coming online in Alberta because we are able to build here much faster than BC and Ontario. All right, so now looking at migration. So people moving around. So net migration by province, Ontario is still taking in the most of any province. Now this number includes the international. So people coming internationally and interprovincially, that total number, Ontario is getting the most, followed by Quebec, followed by Alberta, followed by British Columbia. Now, if we only look at interprovincial migration, that's people moving from province to province in Canada, but who are already in Canada, not coming from some other country, it's a very different story. Alberta is the highest, followed by New Brunswick, which is very low. So Alberta has 12,500. This is for first quarter of 2024. That's the latest data. Alberta has 12,500 people coming here from other provinces. New Brunswick has 1,500. Ontario lost 9,000 people in the first quarter of this year, and so BC lost 2,500. So people are leaving all the other provinces except for New Brunswick, apparently, and they're coming to Alberta. That's why things are getting expensive here. For the first time, Alberta surpasses BC. Calgary tops Vancouver for venture capital investment. That's a play on words, I think. So we're doing better than BC. BC is really a fantastic place to visit, but it's a horrible place to live. The government taxes everything as much as possible, and you can't get a doctor. That's why Alberta's better. Number of Canadians on EI, that is employment insurance. Number of Canadian EI recipients up by over 10% in 1 year. One province is the hardest hit. Let's find out what province that is. So what province is the hardest hit? Let's scroll on down. Let's scroll on down. All right. So by provinces, let's see. So provincially, only Alberta and Prince Edward Island saw a noticeable decline in EI beneficiary numbers. So in Alberta, the numbers actually got better, strangely enough. Quebec and Ontario saw the most significant increases. So Quebec and Ontario are going down. Not a good place to be at all. Especially Ontario, crime is just rampant there. Don't live there. All right, Canadian crude oil exports to Asia surge following the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion completion. So, for a very long time, this pipeline expansion has been in the works, and the government regulated it so badly that they actually had to buy the pipeline and build it themselves because no private company could make it work. Finally, it's built, and there you go. If you build a pipeline, we can export oil. Strangely enough, Alberta produces oil. It's good for Alberta. All right, so Alberta is trying to get some data centers built here for, developing the economy, but it's wary of the possible impacts to the power grid. Yeah, I'm not sure anyone outside of Alberta heard that last winter when it was around minus 35 to minus 45. We had some grid issues, and if you lose power in the winter like that and your furnace doesn't work, you're in for a bad time. Alberta sees population boom, higher oil prices boosting surplus. So our provincial government, our budget is doing rather well because we have a good economy, higher oil prices, good production of oil, and that's beneficial. Moving on now to national news. More than 300 Canadians filing for bankruptcy each day as insolvency filings hit 4-year high. That's from this fellow here, Doug Hoyes. Very, very smart guy. Very smart guy. I'll show you some of his Twitter stuff very soon. So they want me to pay, and I'm not going to. But generally speaking, a lot of people are having a rough go at it in Canada. All right, a little bit more from Doug Hoyes here. This is his Twitter account. So he says, I was wrong. It has begun. I just spoke to Jason Quinney, my trustee in our Brampton office. Here's a very recent story. Guy buys a pre-construction house at the Peak in 2022 for $1.85 million in Brampton. Deposit $240,000. Closing was delayed due to arson, if you can believe it. But closing finally scheduled for June 2024. The house is now worth closer to $1.3 million due to the reduced appraised value. The buyer can't get a mortgage for the full amount, so the deal doesn't close. The builder has listed the house for sale, but there has been no sale so far. The builder just issued a statement of claim for $500,000, the presumed shortfall when the house sells. so the buyer is getting sued. In most cases, I assume the builder will wait until the house sells to crystallize their loss and then sue. So I expect to see a lot more of this later this year and next. So so a lot of people got into pre-construction contracts in Ontario, more so than anywhere else, and because the market has softened significantly, they're now attempting to close on these properties, and these properties are not worth anywhere close to what they paid. Some have gone down 30 to 35% in value, and the rents have started to trend downwards too. So they can't sell them, they can't rent them, they can't get a mortgage on them. That's going to result in lawsuits and bankruptcies. Post haste, Canadian home prices will experience sizable pullbacks in cities you might not expect. This is from Oxford Economics. Let's see what Oxford Economics has to say. So, we think elevated housing unaffordability and the growing strain on households from the wave of mortgage renewals will cause listings to grow faster than demand in the second half of this year. Okay, that sounds on point. For example, they're calling for prices in Toronto and Vancouver to fall 7 and 10%. That's reasonable by the end of this year, more than the national average due to lack of affordability. But other parts of the country will also experience drop in home prices. The report calls for a sizable price pullbacks in markets including Halifax, Calgary, Quebec City, and Winnipeg. Uh, Calgary, we're not going to see that in that time frame. That's just not going to happen. I can't speak to Quebec City and Winnipeg. Halifax, probably a lot of people moved out there during COVID, and there's not a heck of a lot going on there. But Calgary, we're getting all the people from other parts of Canada are moving to Alberta, and just supply and demand. The price increases here are going to slow down, but we're not going to see a price decrease like that by the end of this year. They're expecting the home prices in Calgary to fall 5.1% in the third quarter. That's just wrong. That's wrong. And that's why you shouldn't always listen to expert. We're in the third quarter. So that's just not happening. Most Canadian home builders plan to cut new supply in half. So we're seeing a lot of new home builders decrease the number of homes they're building. This will put a floor on the price decreases, especially in Ontario and BC, because they're not going to be building very many homes. In Alberta, we are seeing those housing starts continue. We have the land, the prices are still good here. It makes sense to build here. But in Ontario and BC, the housing starts are really slowing down, which will put a floor on the home price decrease and on the affordability increase. So it's not going to get much more affordable because they're not building at these prices. All right. Canada's inflation rate falls to 2.5%, paving the way for another interest rate cut. So come the September meeting, we're going to see an interest rate cut, either 25 or 50 basis points. The jury is out. Rate cut too little, too late to avoid the consequences of Canadians' high mortgage renewals, says experts. So a lot of people are having some financial difficulties because of these higher interest rates, even with the interest rates coming down. Consumer debt hits $2.5 trillion in second quarter, with credit card debt at its highest level in 17 years. That's insane. That's a very insane number. So Canadians are basically in debt up to their eyeballs, and we need to go through a deleveraging. When the American economy went through its deleveraging in 2008 or so, it took about 5 years. They are much less indebted than we are now, and our debt levels are much higher than theirs were then. So something to definitely watch out for. Okay, so the fastest growing cities in North America, Canada, and the US. First, there's Toronto, 2023 population increase of 125,000. Next in line, Calgary, 86,000 people here. And this is out of all of US and Canada. Here's a nice little graphic from Visual Capitalist. So there's Calgary up there, Toronto up here, but a lot of people are leaving Toronto. They come, then they leave. And really, not a lot of cities in the US come anywhere close to what we're doing. Here's a warning about buying condos. So this individual bought a condo and then has a $40,000 bill for new windows. You always got to make sure the condo is being well managed and has a good reserve fund. If there's an expense like a window upgrade, that needs to be planned for well in advance. Canada household spending per person falls at a recession pace. So, what the government is doing, the federal government, we're all on a per capita basis, we're having less income, but they're just stuffing the country full of people so that the nominal GDP, the gross domestic purchase power, is actually going up for the whole country. But on an individual level, it's going down. Gross domestic product, GDP. Toronto condo sales dove off a cliff as investors retreat. So in Toronto, they started building a whole bunch of condo towers 4 or 5 years ago in the peak of the COVID hysteria, and these are finally coming to time to take possession and either live in or rent out these condos. They're appraising at values much lower than they sold at, and investors are just leaving that market. So I've heard some condo numbers saying that the sales are at 27-year lows in Toronto. So condos, beware of them. All right, that's about all I have for this month's video. If you're looking to move in or around Calgary, give me a shout. My number's up there. Been a slice.